Hey, everybody. Welcome back if you're returning. Welcome if you're new here. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you didn't see Wednesday's video, I just got off work. That's why the lovely outfit and the hat. And yeah. Happy Friday. Speaking of work, even if you work the weekends, I don't know about y'all, but like the Friday vibe is so much better because there's so many people that Friday is the last day before their weekend and people are just in a better mood. So I just enjoy it based on that. And I'm going to be using the Light Seers Tarot today to get our card for Friday. Let's see what our card is for today. Oh, the Three of Swords. So honestly, if you aren't familiar with tarot, the picture pretty much does justice to what the Three of Swords is about. The traditional tarot shows a heart with three swords piercing through it, but my interpretation of this card is always that we break our own hearts. Like we put the swords there, and that may not seem accurate to some of you. I will explain. If you look at the chords, if you can see them, the strings coming out of the heart, we can tend to, again, based on childhood wounding, relationship wounds, we can attach ourselves to things that are not going to be good for us. We make decisions unconsciously. Again, we aren't doing this on purpose. We're not doing this to ourselves on purpose. We make decisions subconsciously that are not going to work out well for us. And it's done from a place of a desire to do things better, to have better things, to have better outcomes. However, until we realize what's driving our choices, what is behind our decision making, we're going to keep making the same decisions and having the same heartbreaks and wondering, why the hell do I have three swords in my heart? Well, you made the same decision three times in slightly different ways. And it hurts. And that is the thing about healing. There are a lot of fairy tale style, uh, I guess, stories about inner child healing and healing your inner wounds. And no, that shit is brutal. It is straight up brutal to heal your wounds, to sit with all the pain, all of the disappointment, grief, shame, all of this negative, and no emotion is negative. However, the ones that cause pain, we tend to label as negative. And the reason that it's so overwhelming is because we've worked for so long to not face them that we have so much of it pent up inside of us. And if I can share with you my own healing journey, like things that I didn't realize about myself. And as a child, I grew up in the era of, if you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about. And, you know, we would be punished for emotional outbursts, which is just a matter of not knowing. As a young child, you don't know how to regulate your emotions. You don't even know how to recognize emotions. You just go with what you feel, right? It's just natural. As a parent, it's our job to teach a child how to recognize and regulate their emotions, what it's trying to tell them, things like that. But if we don't know, we can't teach our kids that. So, at any rate, I also grew up in a family that, because of, I had a sibling that had very serious substance abuse issues. And so there came a point where, just because he was so demanding of my parents' attention, I was just kind of out there somewhere. I was like the floating child. And I just made sure that I got good grades and didn't need a lot of attention. I tried to fix everybody's unhappiness in the house so that the house would feel better. Like everybody wasn't so angry and upset and tense and all of that kind of thing. And all of this led me to develop an avoidant attachment style. So If you're familiar, avoidant attachment styles develop because of inconsistent care in childhood. And this is not something that I fault my parents with because they didn't know. They knew that I was highly capable, very independent. All of these are trademarks of avoidant attachment people. Uh, I handled everything. I didn't ask for help. I just did my thing. So I'm over here doing my thing, other than the moments that I'd come back in and try to fix everybody real quick to see if it was going to be good to be at home. And if that didn't work, then I'd go back off over here and do my thing. Well, what that did in my mind was I developed independence as a coping mechanism, as a way to keep myself separate from emotions, because those were messy and I didn't like them. Um, and no matter where this comes from for you, know that sometime, at some point, there will be something that breaks you, and those emotions are coming back. We talked about where we're at completion of cycles, at karmic ending points. We've got so much going on energetically right now that if you have not had that moment yet, it might be coming. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing because what you experience after that can be dramatically life changing. However, this is very descriptive of what it feels like when the dam breaks, when the emotions that you have stuffed for years, all of a sudden, in that one event, come blasting through, and it's overwhelming. And the same thing happens, even if it's not like a singular event, but you just start to process, because we can only hold so much in. There has to come a point where all of that gunk from the past comes up and we deal with it. And it's not a beautiful sunshine, rainbows, lollipops, Zen crystals. Okay, that's all wonderful, but that comes after the mess. And in that moment of breaking, you're actually opening the wound to heal. It's like having a giant boil, and as long as it's got all that festering inside of it, you can't get rid of the infection. It's got to be drained. It has got to be drained. And we all have childhood wounding. The difference is we had no control over the situation as children. We are now adults, and we can reparent our inner child. We can go back, find out where those wounds came from, where that emotion stemmed from. Did you not get any attention? Were your needs dismissed? Were your parents hot and cold? Sometimes they were there, sometimes they weren't. Were they dangerous? If your parent was a threat to your safety, you're going to have some deep emotional wounding. I mean, all of these things add up. Were your feelings dismissed when you expressed emotion? What reaction did you get? What has that caused for you now? Is it religious doctrine? Something in the education system, whether you were bullied or, you struggled with school and it made you feel dumb and you felt dumb all your life, only to find out they said Albert Einstein should be in special needs classes just because school does not work for everyone. Some of the most intelligent people ever to exist on this planet sucked at school. There's so many things that can scar us as children that as adults, we can now take a different perspective on and realize that there's nothing wrong with me. I just didn't fit into that box. Or there's nothing wrong with me needing to express my emotions. My emotions matter. What's important to me matters. Just because at that time my parents didn't have the bandwidth to be able to be there for me in the way that I felt that I needed doesn't mean that I can't be there for me now. If no one stood up for you, if you always had to hug the stinky uncle that made you uncomfortable because your parents forced you to, whatever it is, and different people have different levels of tolerance for what causes emotional damage. But that damage can be repaired. And the first thing that we can do is start to create boundaries. If you had to say yes to everything because people pleasing was the only way to make it through your childhood, you're going to need to establish boundaries. If you allow people into your life because you feel for them, you feel sorry for them, and you end up overgiving and putting yourself in a bad position, okay, where's that coming from? You know, were you the caretaker in a codependent scenario? Whether it was your sibling, your parent, are you the responsible one, the one who's always taking care of everything? All of it falls on your shoulders because you're capable. These things all go back to childhood. And when we start to dig in and find out what's underneath those behaviors, we start to learn how to defend ourselves in the way that we weren't defended as children. And we talked about victim mentality on Wednesday. If you have a victim mentality or have a tendency to slip into a victim mentality, that's your inner child. And that part of you is asking, why? Why is this still happening to me? Which means that you, as the now adult, can step up and change the outcome. You can't go back and change your childhood. What happened there was the seed for the growth you were meant to experience as an adult. But in order to experience that growth, you have to find out, where are my wounds? What caused them? What situations, what people, what emotions does that entail for me? And we talked about the triggers in the outside environment, the stimulus, all of the things that will drive your behavior because of this wounding, because of the beliefs that you learned in childhood, and how that will continue to screw us over until we dig it out and we actually go through this. Healing is not pretty. It's taxing. I mean, and it's a process. You don't sit down one time and, hey, I'm good. It's layers. I started this journey many years ago, and still, we just keep continuing to get better and better and more aware. We find new things, new information, something like the way I've referred to it before is like leveling up, where, okay, you passed level one healing, you scratched the surface, you got close. Now we're going to go to level two. And I mean, this is like crying on the floor, gut wrenching, and not all of it. Not all of it. Some of the healing can be very beautiful. It can just be going back and revisiting positive childhood memories and things like that. But it's reflection to try and figure out where your behaviors today come from, what wounds, what beliefs, what are you still holding on to that as a child damaged you and created these beliefs and these habits and the attachment patterns. Because this is so sad. I was explaining that, I had developed an avoidant attachment style. And what that means is I didn't feel. I would not let people get to know me. I had 3 long-term relationships. Not one of those people actually knew who I am. I would not expose my vulnerabilities. And obviously, you're not going to build a good relationship that way, but that was the thing. I wasn't allowing that because that would lead to hurt, which it did, because you can't have a relationship with someone who refuses to feel. And at the first sign of potential pain, I would look for a reason to napalm it, burn it to the ground, not just the bridge, not just the city, the whole fucking state is going up in flames. I'm holding a mental funeral for the other person, and I'm done. Like, I legit had an emotional on off switch, which is very, very, very unhealthy and does not lead to productive or healthy relationships, because I was afraid of emotion. I was afraid to feel, because I had been led to believe that feeling led to pain. And I'd had my share of pain. I was done. I'm like, I'm not even going to be open to it. Well, that creates more pain because you can't, if you can't, hold on. It's not that you can't. If you refuse to accept emotion, well, the emotions that, love, joy, happiness, peace, you know, you just don't feel life. And it's really hard to grow and learn, expand if you refuse to feel. And that was something that I struggled with for a very long time. And I just have an awareness. You don't necessarily recover from your attachment style. You learn in the right scenario that you can trust. It's a slow process of opening. But for every bit that you open, you tend to withdraw. You just need to process that. Okay, but did you die? No. Okay, maybe I'll open up a little more. Be patient with yourself. The healing journey can be exhausting. And like I said, it's not something that happens overnight. You don't go for a weekend and just get it all out and you're good. Little by little, here and there, and each time you start to feel like you've got something, you're going to find the next layer. But that's what brings you to self mastery. You can become a securely attached individual regardless of what your previous behavior patterns were or attachment patterns were. You can change your beliefs about yourself, the world, people, anything. And the more we allow ourselves to see the potential beauty in life, the more it actually happens. Because our energy, our thoughts, our beliefs, our perspective, our perception drives so much of our experience on this planet. If we believe life is hard, it's hard to get money, it's hard to stay healthy. Well, whatever you believe is hard, life will verify for you. It'll make sure that, yes, it is, because that's what you believe, and we look for things that affirm our beliefs. When I believed that love was equivalent to death because it caused pain, and I know that sounds dramatic, but really it's not. Like, for someone with an avoidant attachment, love is the idea of needing someone or being open to someone or it being exposed to someone. A lot of it is just insecurity, but it's based off the childhood patterns and feeling that you weren't important, that there's something wrong with you. You don't want yourself exposed to someone to reject you because there we go, it's pain. So when you go about life believing that, you're going to project that onto people who think you're great, but you're over here thinking they're judging you and everything else. So you shut them out and you verify your own belief without necessarily having a logical perspective or perception of the situation. If you see what I'm trying to say here, we perpetuate our own issues. But if you take baby steps, pick one thing that causes you anxiety, whether it's social, whatever it is, and start reflecting what situations bring that out in you. Where do you feel it in your body? Do you remember a time when you were a child that you were in a similar situation where you felt that emotion? Because what generally happens is we can go back to a specific moment or a series of similar moments where we felt that emotion in that kind of scenario and we didn't have protection. We were vulnerable and there was no one there to stand up for us. And that's where now, as an adult, you can protect that part of you that gets anxious in those situations. I got you. Think about your biggest, toughest relative that had your back, or, a friend in school, anybody that you looked up to that you felt would keep you safe. If you didn't have someone like that in your life, adopt someone. Thor, The Rock, whatever. But imagine a guardian. Become that for yourself, and you'll find that you will be able to create safety and peace within yourself as you go through this process, as you show yourself, I'm going to stand up for me. I've got me. And the more you do that, the more you say no. You hold your boundaries. You don't give in. You bring out your inner bitch or your inner asshole. It doesn't have to be gender specific. And start being firm about how you deserve to be treated, what you will and will not tolerate, and that if you cross the line, you don't have to napalm, but there will be consequences. These are my standards. And if you don't meet them, the consequence may be my absence. You know, Whatever the situation might be, the consequence might be that I go to a different job. It might be that I quit cooking your dinner. Whatever the situation, poor behavior that you do not wish to accept has to be met with consequences to show that I deserve better and I will not accept that. And if it's just removing yourself from the situation, that's respecting you. The more you respect you, the more you bring it out of other people because you just embody it to the point where people know you got standards. You have an energy about you that says you are not going to mistreat me. And in order to do that, we also have to not mistreat ourselves. And that kind of goes back to we talked about on Wednesday, when we let ourselves down, when we don't follow through with what we want. It starts inside. It starts with you. How you treat you dictates how the world will treat you. So start there. Go do something really nice for yourself. Okay? So I hope this helps. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will talk to you soon.